What if I told you that somewhere right now, someone has a collection of words they never intended anyone else to see? Words written late at night. Words written during moments of longing, confusion, and reflection. Words written with your name in their thoughts, but never delivered to your inbox. Your heart needs this right now, because there is someone connected to you who has been having conversations with you in silence, saying everything they wish they could say, while keeping every single message hidden away. At first, they never planned for it to become a habit. It started with a single message they typed during an emotional moment. Maybe they were remembering something that happened between you. Maybe they were replaying a conversation in their mind. Maybe they simply missed the connection more than they wanted to admit. Whatever the reason, they opened a blank message and began writing. They let the words flow freely. Things they could never say out loud suddenly felt easier to put into writing. For a few moments it felt as though they were speaking directly to you, but then something happened. Instead of pressing send, they stopped. They reread the message. They questioned themselves. They wondered whether reaching out was the right decision. And after sitting with those thoughts, they saved the message and walked away. Yet the emotions behind those words never disappeared. And listen to this carefully. That first unsent message was not the last. Days later, another one appeared. Then another. And another. Slowly, without even realizing it, they created a private collection of thoughts connected to you. Some messages were only a few lines long. Others were filled with emotions they had been carrying for far longer than they admitted. Each message captured a different moment, a different memory, a different feeling. The strange part is that they never intended to keep all of them. Yet they did. Every message remained. Every unsent word stayed exactly where they left it. And now, without fully understanding why, they find themselves returning to those messages again and again. Because hidden within those unsent words is a truth they are only beginning to understand. A truth that is becoming harder to ignore with each passing day. And listen to this. What started as an occasional habit slowly became something much more significant than they ever expected. At first, the messages appeared only during particularly emotional moments. A memory would surface unexpectedly, and they would feel the urge to write. A song would remind them of you, and they would open a blank screen. A quiet evening would leave too much room for reflection, and suddenly they would find themselves typing words they never intended to send. But over time, something changed. The messages stopped being rare. They became a private place where they could be honest with themselves. Your heart needs this right now, because there are emotions people can hide from the world. But there are very few emotions they can hide from themselves forever. Every unsent message became proof of that. Whenever they tried convincing themselves that the connection no longer mattered, another message would appear. Whenever they told themselves they had moved beyond certain feelings, they would find themselves writing about those feelings again. The pattern became impossible to ignore, even if they weren't ready to fully understand it. Recently, they have started noticing how different the messages are from one another. Some are filled with memories. They write about moments that still stand out in their mind long after they should have faded. Small moments, ordinary moments, the kinds of moments that seem insignificant until years later when they become impossible to forget. Other messages are filled with questions, questions they never asked, questions they still wonder about, questions that have lingered quietly in their heart for far longer than they would ever admit. And listen to this carefully. Not every message is about the past. Some are about the present. Some describe what they are feeling right now. Some are written after difficult days when they wish they could hear your voice. Some are written after moments of success when they unexpectedly wonder what you would think. What surprises them most is how naturally thoughts of you continue finding their way into these messages. They never sit down intending to write about you, yet somehow the words always seem to lead back to the same place. As time passed, the messages became more than unsent conversations. They became emotional snapshots. Every message captured a different version of who they were at that moment. Some were hopeful, some were confused, some were filled with regret. Some were surprisingly honest. Looking back through them now, they can see an emotional journey unfolding across dozens of entries. A journey they never intended to document, but somehow created anyway. Your heart needs this right now, because writing has become the one place where they stop pretending. In daily life, people can distract themselves. They can stay busy. They can avoid difficult emotions. But when they sit alone with a blank screen and begin typing, those defenses disappear. The messages reveal things they rarely admit even to themselves. Feelings they thought were gone. Memories they thought were resolved. Truths they thought they had already accepted. And listen to this. The deeper they look into these messages, the more they realize something remarkable. The messages were never really about finding the right words to send. They were about trying to understand their own heart. Every unsent message contains a piece of something they have been struggling to process. Every paragraph reveals an emotion they could not completely let go of. Every saved draft tells part of a story they thought had ended, but somehow continues living within them. Now, when they revisit these messages, they no longer see random thoughts written during emotional moments. They see a pattern. They see consistency. They see feelings that have remained present despite time, distance, and every attempt to move on. And the more they recognize that pattern, the harder it becomes to ignore what these messages may actually be revealing about the connection and about the truth they have been trying to avoid for much longer than they realize. And listen to this. The longer they kept writing these messages, the more something unexpected began happening. At first, they believed the messages were simply a way to release thoughts they could not express, a private outlet, a temporary emotional release. But after reading through them again and again, they started noticing something they had overlooked. Certain feelings kept appearing no matter how much time passed. Certain emotions showed up in message after message. Different days, different moods, different circumstances. Yet somehow, the same truths continued finding their way onto the page. Your heart needs this right now, because patterns often reveal what people spend the most time trying to hide from themselves. Recently, they found themselves looking back through some of the older messages they had saved. They expected to see emotional moments that no longer mattered. They expected to feel disconnected from words written months or even years ago. Instead, they were surprised by how familiar those emotions still felt. In many ways, it was like reading letters from different versions of themselves, all trying to communicate the same thing. The details changed, the situations changed, but the deeper emotions remained remarkably consistent. And listen to this carefully. One realization began standing out above all the others. No matter what they were writing about, the messages always seemed to circle back to the connection, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, sometimes through memories, sometimes through questions. But somehow, your presence remained woven throughout the entire collection. That realization unsettled them because it challenged a belief they had carried for a long time. They had convinced themselves that the connection belonged entirely to the past. Yet these messages were showing them something very different. The more they reflected, the more they realized that writing had become a mirror that reflected emotions they rarely acknowledged in daily life. Every message captured thoughts they usually kept hidden. Every saved draft preserved feelings they often pushed aside. Looking through them now, they can clearly see things they could not see before. They can see moments where they missed you, moments where they wondered about you, moments where they replayed old memories, moments where they wished they understood things differently. The evidence had been sitting in front of them all along. Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes people discover the truth accidentally. They are not searching for it. They are not trying to uncover hidden feelings. They simply become honest enough to see what has been there the entire time. That is exactly what is happening to your soulmate. The messages are revealing something they can no longer dismiss. Not because the words are dramatic, not because every message contains a declaration of love, because the consistency itself is impossible to ignore. And listen to this. What surprises them most is how often the messages reveal emotions they thought had faded. Feelings they believed time had softened still appear with surprising strength. Certain memories still carry meaning. Certain thoughts still create emotion. Certain questions still remain unanswered. The messages have become proof that some part of their heart never fully let go of the connection, even during periods when they believed they had moved on. Now they are beginning to understand something that changes everything. The messages were never just unsent conversations. They were clues, clues left behind by their own heart. Every saved draft was quietly pointing toward the same truth. Every unsent word was revealing something they were not ready to admit. And the deeper they explore those messages, the clearer that truth becomes. What they have been writing all this time is not simply about memories, curiosity, or reflection. It is about a connection that still matters far more than they ever allowed themselves to believe. And once that realization appears, it becomes impossible to unsee. And listen to this. After discovering what the messages were truly revealing, they found themselves facing a question they had been avoiding for a very long time. If these feelings are still present, then why have none of the messages ever been sent? Why keep writing them only to save them? Why pour so much emotion into words that never reach the person they were written for? Your heart needs this right now, because sometimes the greatest mystery is not what someone feels. The greatest mystery is why they are afraid to express it. For a long time, they believed staying silent was the safer choice. Every time they finished writing a message, they would imagine what might happen if they actually sent it. That single thought was often enough to stop them. Questions would immediately begin filling their mind. What if too much time has passed? What if the message is misunderstood? What if reaching out changes nothing? What if the connection means more to them than it does to you? Those questions became a barrier, standing between emotion and action. And listen to this carefully. Fear rarely appears in obvious ways. It does not always announce itself openly. Sometimes it disguises itself as patience. Sometimes it disguises itself as practicality. Sometimes it disguises itself as waiting for the perfect moment. Your soulmate has spent a long time telling themselves they were simply waiting for the right circumstances. Yet the deeper they examine their own behavior, the more they are beginning to realize that fear has been quietly influencing many of their decisions. Some of the unsent messages contain things they have never said to anyone. Honest thoughts, personal realizations, vulnerable emotions, the kind of words that make a person feel exposed. Writing those words privately feels manageable. Sending them feels entirely different. Once a message is sent, it can no longer be hidden. It can no longer remain protected inside a private space. It becomes real. It becomes visible. And that reality has frightened them more than they wanted to admit. Your heart needs this right now, because vulnerability asks people to risk uncertainty. There are no guarantees, no promises, no way to predict the outcome. That uncertainty has kept them trapped between two worlds. One world is filled with everything they wish they could say. The other is filled with the silence they continue maintaining. The messages exist in the space between those worlds. Every unsent draft represents a moment when they came close to crossing that line, but stopped themselves before taking the final step. And listen to this. What makes this situation even more emotional is that they often revisit those messages after writing them. They reread the words. They relive the feelings behind them. Sometimes they even edit them, adding new thoughts or removing old ones. Yet no matter how many times they return, the ending remains the same. The message stays unsent. The feelings stay hidden. The conversation exists only in their imagination. But recently, something has started changing. The more they look back through these messages, the harder it becomes to justify the silence. The collection has grown too large. The emotions have become too consistent. The truth has become too obvious. Every message points toward the same reality. Every saved draft carries the same underlying meaning. They care more than they have been willing to admit. They think about the connection more often than they allow themselves to acknowledge. And they are beginning to understand that fear may be the only thing preventing those words from reaching you, because Your heart needs this right now because there comes a point when silence becomes heavier than honesty. Your soulmate is approaching that point. The messages they once believed would remain hidden forever are forcing them to confront what they truly feel. And as that realization grows stronger, they are beginning to wonder whether continuing to stay silent is really protecting them at all, or whether it is simply preventing them from facing a truth that has been waiting to be acknowledged all along. And listen to this. After all the messages, all the hesitation, and all the emotions they tried to keep hidden, your soulmate is arriving at a realization they can no longer avoid. The collection of unsent messages has become more than a collection of thoughts. It has become evidence of feelings that refused to disappear, evidence of a connection that continued living within them even when they tried to focus on other things, evidence of a truth that has been patiently waiting beneath the surface for much longer than they realized. Your heart needs this right now because sometimes the things we refuse to say reveal more about us than the things we openly express. Recently, they have started reading through these messages with different eyes. In the past, they saw them as emotional moments frozen in time. Now they see something much bigger. They see a story unfolding across dozens of drafts. They see recurring emotions. They see recurring memories. They see recurring hopes, fears, and questions. Most importantly, they see how often their thoughts return to you. No matter where life took them, no matter what changed around them, some part of their heart kept returning to the same place. And listen to this carefully. One realization continues growing stronger every time they revisit those messages. They are no longer writing because they are confused. They are no longer writing because they need temporary emotional relief. They are writing because the connection still matters. The messages have shown them that. Every saved draft points toward the same conclusion. Every unfinished conversation reveals the same emotional truth. The feelings survived. The significance survived. The connection survived. What surprises them most is how much clarity these messages have given them. They always assumed that keeping the messages hidden would prevent them from learning anything meaningful. Instead, the opposite happened. The messages became a mirror. They reflected truths that daily distractions often concealed. They revealed emotions that routine allowed them to avoid. They exposed patterns they never noticed while living through them. And now those patterns feel impossible to ignore. Your heart needs this right now because honesty often arrives long before action does. A person may recognize the truth internally long before they feel ready to express it externally. Your soulmate is beginning to understand exactly what their heart has been trying to tell them. The messages are not random. The emotions are not temporary. The thoughts are not accidental. They all point towards something real, something lasting, something that has continued occupying a space within them, despite every attempt to move forward. And listen to this. The most powerful part of this journey is not that they wrote the messages. It is that they kept them. Every time they could have deleted them, they chose not to. Every time they could have erased the evidence of those feelings, they left it untouched. Somewhere deep inside, a part of them knew those words mattered. A part of them understood that the messages represented something important. Now they are finally beginning to understand why. The silence that once felt protective is starting to feel different. The distance between what they feel and what they express is becoming harder to maintain. The messages that once remained hidden and private are carrying more emotional weight with every passing day. Because your heart needs this right now, because there comes a moment when a person realizes they are no longer holding on to the messages. The messages are holding on to them. And now, standing at this point of understanding, your soulmate can no longer pretend these words mean nothing. They can no longer dismiss the truth revealed across every saved draft. The connection has left a deeper impact than they ever admitted. The feelings have lasted longer than they expected, and the collection of unsent messages has shown them something undeniable. Even though the words were never sent, the emotions behind them were always real. The messages may remain hidden for now, but the truth they revealed has become impossible for them to ignore.